morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, April 7th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, I was over at Ohio State yesterday interviewing some players, and the big topic of conversation was this five-man defensive line that the Buckeyes are experimenting with this spring. I mean, the players were pretty coy about it, but it's clear the Buckeyes are experimenting with this five-man defensive front. Your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of things you could say that's a positive about it. I don't necessarily know how much they're going to use it against a team like Penn State, but here's the simple fact. Ohio State's defensive line this year is so deep. They have so much talent on it. And I can understand why they may be trying to get some of these guys on the field more often. Because think about it. If you run your Rushman package out there, that's awesome. But you know who you're leaving off the field? A couple of D tackles who've had very good successes in the past for Ohio State. Now, I mean, you talk about the four defensive ends that Ohio State has right now. Those guys are all NFL caliber players. And, you know, the thing for Ohio State is when you have that kind of depth on your D-line, maybe you want to get those guys in the field more. Now, from a schematic point of view, I'm not convinced it's the world's greatest idea. Like I said, against Penn State, unless you're on the goal line, I don't think you want to be running out five defensive linemen and letting Penn State throw the ball over top. But here's the other thing. Even if Ohio State barely pulls this lookout the entire year, but they talk about it all the time, it gets out in the media, people keep chit-chatting about it. You know what other college coaches are going to have to do? Waste valuable time preparing for Ohio State running out a five-man D-line. So this is it may be subterfuge, it may be something to it. I don't really know. I'm intrigued to see what happens with it, I guess, but I don't think it's going to all of a sudden become their base defense either.
Another thing they're experimenting with is using Sam Hubbard and Jalyn Holmes basically as linebackers, like having them stand up at certain times, basically playing them as outside linebackers. And I like that. That's another wrinkle. It's nothing, I mean, this happens all the time. We see it a lot in the NFL. I mean, Mike Vrabel was a guy that moved all around. He played, you didn't know on a particular play if he was a defensive end or an outside linebacker. He was just pretty much, you know, a hybrid. And that's what they're trying to do with Sam Hubbard and Jalyn Holmes. I really like that. Again, I don't know how much they're going to use that, but just having that wrinkle in there, I really like using Sam Hubbard and Jalyn Holmes kind of as a stand-up linebacker at times, Bax.
Well, and if you look at the background of the kids, especially Sam Hubbard, I mean, Hubbard's the kid who could run. Hubbard was the kid who ran, he was a safety, you know, and then he just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And everybody wants to talk about him committed to be playing lacrosse at Notre Dame before people realized how good he might have been at football. You know, we've seen success in the past at places like OSU too, where sometimes when you have a lot of pressure on a quarterback and you have a situation where, hey, instead of rushing a guy like Hubbard or Holmes, they drop back into a zone, and the quarterback just tries to get a hot read off and get the ball out. And what happens? Steve Miller returns a touchdown against Alabama, or what was it? Solomon Thomas picking the ball off in the Sugar Bowl against Arkansas, dropping into the zone, right? So there's
the exact same building. The exact same building, the Superdome. I love it.
Almost the exact same spot on the field, too, by the way.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I was there for both of them. It was the exact same spot. You're right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as you say, though, that's the type of thing that, like, whenever there's a ton of pressure on a quarterback, and the quarterback reads that there's a pressure, and, you know, if you have what you think is a five-man D-line, and then there's some, you know, pressure coming from one of the linebackers or whatever, well, he's not going to have time to account for, hey, where'd Sam Hubbard go? He's going to say, where's my hot read? And he's going to try to get the ball off. Well, if Hubbard or Holmes is standing right in front of the guy who's supposed to get the ball, it's an easy pick. Or it's a ball knocked down because they have hands of stone. One of the two, right? So there's things to be said about that. But again, I don't think you're going to see that as your base D. I mean, you know, as fun as it may be to have, you know, a walkout linebacker with, you know, Hubbard and Holmes doing preparation for the NFL to be maybe the outside guy in a 3-4 scheme, are they really better at playing pure outside linebacker than a guy like Jerome Baker or Dante Booker? I mean, like, that's where you have to look at this and say, maybe they'll utilize it in certain spots. You know, maybe there'll be a time where they bring it out and the defense is like, you know, it's something we've never really seen before, right? And the offense will get confused. Maybe you get some good pressure on the quarterback, because that's what you got here as a team that can set the OSU sack record this year. But again, I do not see this being a consistent thing outside of goal line situations, you know. It may just be a fun way to try to get more of your best athletes on the field.
Switching to the offensive side of the ball, JT Barrett, of course, is working hard on his footwork and his deep ball accuracy this spring and focusing on the latter. And Urban Meyer says JT's throwing the deep ball very well. He says, 90% of the deep balls are on target. Not necessarily 90% are being completed, but 90% of the deep balls are on target, and they're either, maybe a receiver sometimes is dropping them. But overall, he feels very good about JT. Now, the proof's going to be in the pudding. We won't know for sure till the game starts. He can look great in practice. I know a lot of fans are like, I won't believe it until I see it, and I completely get that. There's a scrimmage tomorrow. We're finally going to get to see them scrimmage. Usually when we have open practice, it's like we get to see the first hour, not going live. They're going to be going live tomorrow at the Student Appreciation Day, so I'm really curious to see how well JT Barrett is throwing the deep ball. Bax, when you hear these comments from Urban Meyer, do you think he is, because he's known as a straight shooter, do you believe that JT Barrett has suddenly gotten better at throwing the deep ball, or do you think maybe Urban Meyer's kind of just talking him up in the press? What do you make of these comments?
Well, I think JT Barrett was perfectly capable of throwing a deep ball till his footwork went to hell, and Ohio State stopped throwing any deep balls whatsoever last year. If you go back to 2014, JT had numerous times where he stepped into a deep ball and got it downfield. But here's the difference compared to last year that hopefully we're going to see this fall. One, it's really hard to step into a deep ball whenever you don't have time to actually throw the football. So if the protection on the offensive line is a significant upgrade from what we had last year, which by all accounts they're expecting it to be, then that's going to give JT time. And two, his footwork the last 2 years has been just abysmal. We've talked about this at length. JT was coming off of that ankle injury going into 2015. He developed some bad habits as he was trying to just do whatever he could to get on the field. There was no real strong coaching in terms of his fundamentals from a guy like Tim Beck, who, let's face it, couldn't coach, and who is now at Texas to help recruit, not do anything else. And JT got into a lot of bad footwork habits. He threw off his back foot a lot. He didn't rotate his weight forward into the football. And that's something that, in 2014, we didn't see. JT had great fundamentals. So if his fundamentals return and you give him a little more time to throw, of course he's going to be able to throw a more accurate deep ball. I mean, that's common sense. So I don't doubt Urban whatsoever on this one. It's not like I'm saying, it's not one of those things where you're like, man, Paris Campbell has got to be awesome in practice, but I'm worried about his hands because he just, when the lights have been on, hasn't had them yet, right? JT, we've seen throw the deep ball well. It's just been a couple of years. And if you got a guy like Dave fixing the footwork situation we've seen with JT, and you got a guy like Kevin Wilson who's going to set it up so that JT's actually in a position to succeed throwing it downfield, guess what? We're going to see more deep balls this year. We're going to see more deep balls completed this year. JT is perfectly capable. You may not have Cardell Jones's rocket arm, but you don't have to complete a good deep ball. And this is a guy in JT Barrett whose hallmark when he first came on the scene was accuracy and fundamentals. I'm glad to see them getting back to it. And it tells you, again, the value of coaching. And the coaching this year from OSU is so upgraded compared to last year. You can already tell. I can't wait to see this scrimmage. The spring game will be fun, even though I don't think we'll see a ton of JT in live action. But I can't wait to see the scrimmage because Barrett is going to be infinitely better this year. There's a lot of people right now who are going, oh, Bax is just defending JT again. Well, when we're halfway through the year, JT Barrett's a front runner for the Heisman because he's actually getting coaching. He's actually in a real offense. Everybody's not going to be complaining about JT Barrett. They're going to be saying, man, how horrible was the offensive staff the last 2 years prior to this. I can't wait to see OSU go out this year with a competent offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach who's actually able to coach quarterbacks.
Exactly. If JT has a big year this year, which I think he will, we'll note the problem was. He finished fifth for the Heisman as a redshirt freshman when Tom Herman was his offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. If he does well as a fifth-year senior with Kevin Wilson calling the shots and Ryan Day helping out, we will know what we already think we know, that the problem was not really JT Barrett. It was mostly the coaching. It was Tim Beck. It was Ed Warner. It was poor pass protection. So we will know the true story after this season, and we'll know if people are just making excuses for JT or if it really wasn't JT's fault. Hey, before I let you go, real quick, Big Ten kind of made a lot of noise when they announced they're going to have some Friday night games. They're still going to have some, but they're scaling back on them. Northwestern doesn't want anything to do with this, so they're scaling back on the Friday night games. I have mixed emotions about this. I agree that Friday night should be for high school football, but if you're somebody who doesn't go to a high school football game on a Friday night, there's college football on anyway. It might be the WAC. It's obviously not Big Ten football usually. But if you're a team like, let's say, Minnesota or Purdue, I would rather play on a Friday night and get that exposure, assuming I'm on ESPN or ESPN2, I'm the only game on a Friday night, then play at noon on Saturday and be buried on Big Ten Network. Not be the main game on Big Ten Network. Be like the fourth game on Big Ten Network where you have to have Big Ten Network Quattro in non-high definition to watch the game. I would rather play on the Friday night. What's your take, Bax?
Oh, totally. whenever they did this Friday night thing, I said it would be insane if you ever saw Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State play on a Friday night. Outside of, like, the first Friday, right? Michigan State does it every year. They play the first Friday night of the year. But you're right. Like, if you're Purdue or Rutgers or one of these other little programs in the Big Ten that, says, hey, I'm in the Big Ten, but everybody else is like, oh, yeah, they're in the Big Ten, like Illinois or something, then, yeah, you're going to get lost in the swag of a giant Saturday where there's 25 billion games, and that, Illinois versus Bowling Green game isn't going to get any attention unless Illinois loses to Bowling Green. So if you want attention for your program, I thought this was perfect for places like Indiana and other smaller schools to get their publicity for, the Friday night national spotlight. Look, there was a long time it took me to come around to this. I used to say, we're in the Big Ten. We play on Saturday. We play at noon or we play at 3:30. Every now and then we'll play at 8. Right? It took me a while to come around to it. I get the thought process on it. But at this point I'm like, I want to play every Ohio State game at night except for the Michigan game. That can be like that game used to be, right? Oh my God, it's a noon kickoff? No way. And if you're one of these smaller programs, man, look what happens to some of these other places like Boise and all these other programs that used to be also Rams who play on Thursday and Friday nights and stuff. People watch football every night of the week during football season because they want to watch football. How do you think Indiana's going to get exposure to kids in Florida? How do you think Minnesota and P.J. Fleck are going to be able to recruit down in Texas or California if kids don't even see them on TV, right? If you have a game on a Friday night or a Thursday night, a kid comes home from a football game, hey, who's Minnesota playing? Oh, they're beating Middle Tennessee State by 2 touchdowns. Good for them. That's a big recruiting deal for schools that need help in recruiting. The big boys don't need to play on Friday night, but the little programs, it helps them a lot. And I know they want to help the high school football programs, but I think in the long run, it's short-sighted to take Big Ten teams off of Thursday and Friday nights because it's going to help those little guys get more eyeballs on their program and help them recruit better. Instead of being, like you said, on ESPN Quattro or ESPN The Ocho or Big Ten, the split screen from 1999,
Great insights, as always, from the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday. It is, of course, The Bucket. Thank you very much, Bax, and thank you very much to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.